Hi, Jim here, and you're listening to the Honest Filmmaker podcast. Now, this week I thought we'd do something a little bit special. We've got Mark Hampton on, friend of the podcast. Hello, Mark. How you doing?
I'm really well. Great to be here.
Good. And Mark's film's just been released, unlicensed, on all digital platforms. So we thought, as we've both got films that are out there on all these digital platforms, we would go through 10 things you should never do when making a feature film. And this is from our own experiences on these movies we've just made. So,
and this is my first feature film.
Which is important.
Things that I've learned from like my first full-length feature film, like things that I have learned from coming in it from as an absolute beginner. So
yeah, and that's going to be super valuable because he's just made these mistakes, so they're going to be quite raw. Mine, I've had a long time on the previous features to make even more mistakes, but hopefully this will prevent you from making similar mistakes. So I'll let you start, Mark. What's your number one on your list?
So my number one is this: do not shoot a first draft. My film came together very quickly for various different reasons, but we ended up shooting what was essentially a first draft. And I had this great idea that when we were going to go into the production of it, we'd be able to take a lot of those scenes and tear them apart and kind of work with the actors and really kind of rehearse them. And we did do that a few times, but a lot of the time we were just against the clock. And all we could do was shoot what was on the page. And so what happened is I ended up doing a lot of rewriting in the edit. So I edited the film myself because I knew that this was going to happen. I knew that actually the script wasn't kind of as strong as it should be, and the pacing. The script is good. I'm really proud of it, but I just know that had I had more time to go back and really sort of sharpen it and tighten it, it would have been tighter. It would have been better. I could have brought more things into it. There are a few things that I came up with, like when we were shooting, it was like, oh man, that would have been a great beat. And it's just I hadn't had that time to think this through because we went from nothing to a script in 2 months, and then we were shooting immediately afterwards. So the timeline for this was crazy. But I would highly recommend, like, do your development work, do your, work out what your film is about, work out like what does your character, your protagonist want, and what is the thing that they're chasing after. And I was very lucky that I had a really clear idea about that, what there was. And when I wrote for the first draft, I also knew that I was playing the character, so I could bring quite a lot of stuff to it that maybe wasn't on the page, but I knew in my head about what the character was going through. So I had a few kind of like safety nets or get out of jail free cards, if you like, because I was playing those kind of multiple roles. And because I was producing it and directing it, we were able to go back and do pickups and some reshoots and things that we needed to do to fix some problems in the movie. And because luckily my lead actor is always available,
and cheap,
I was
he's very
able to
cheap.
do that.
Yeah.
If you're a director who's not an actor, if you're shooting and you've got cast who have come to you for this period of shooting and then they all disappear, that's much harder to do. And I guess, Jim, that's much more kind of what you're used to, isn't it? Bringing people back in when you've got their schedules to think about, and you've had an idea about what you can do. So yeah, that's my first one. Don't shoot a first draft.
Good tip. And I'm going to follow along those lines. And my one is don't keep that script a secret. So when you've written that first draft that you're not going to go straight out and shoot, is to show it to as many people as you can and get as much input as you can on that. Have those awkward conversations with people. And if they don't get it, listen to them. Don't be precious, because you'll save pain later, as you said, when you get to the edit suite. And I guess that one brought up a question for me, which was, when you're writing, I'm a big save the cat man. Is there anything do you subscribe to any particular, is there a book you've gone, that's the one that's my Bible? Is there a story structure you like? How do you formulate that?
So from many years ago, I bought the Screenwriter's Bible. And it's a brilliant book because it gives you everything. It gives you everything from like, what is the formatting supposed to be? What should it be? Should be 12-point courier, this much spacing, all the things that make it look like a screenplay. And that's really powerful because especially when you're first starting, you start writing and you're like, wow, that looks like a script. You feel like a screenwriter. So it kind of gives you that energy straight away. But it also talked to you about character arcs and your story arcs, and the fact that you've got to have this kind of roller coaster of highs and lows, and you've got to make sure you're giving the audience all these things. So I always recommend to people who are screenwriters or emerging screenwriters that they have a look at the Screenwriter's Bible, because it's a brilliant book. So that's great. I also like Save the Cat. I don't necessarily prescribe to it like strictly, because they give you kind of here's page 12, you know, you need your inciting incident, whatever.
I wouldn't go that
think,
closely, but
but
for
I
me
think
it's a good structure.
it's a good reference, right? It's
good
a good
reference.
reference to be like, oh, so I have, it looks like I've got that moment. I think I've got a midpoint. There's definitely a bit where it's all feels like it's all going horribly wrong, the point of no return, as they call it. And then everything leads into the finale, and things like, you know, my opening and my closing, you know, they kind of mirror each other and stuff like that. And like all of these things, and I tend to go through and go, have I done these things? Not I need to insert this here, here, and here, but actually, are these bits kind of in there? And if they're not, you go, okay, well, would it help? Sometimes the answer's yes, sometimes the answer's no, right? So it's really about using it as a reference rather than using it as a kind of like prescriptive kind of like you do this. And I think with all of the screenwriting books, the thing to take away from that is the bit that's useful to you, right? Always take away the stuff that you find personally useful, because you're the storyteller. And there's actually not a wrong way to tell a story. There's just your way to tell a story. So it can be helpful if you're trying to go, well, is this going to work? Is the audience going to be taken on that kind of journey? Is things like, is there a moment where I need to break the tension with a bit of humor? That kind of thing can really help.
Yeah, definitely.
But there's that. And there was another book called How to Write a Screenplay in 21 Days.
Right.
That I picked up completely at random. I just thought, oh, that sounds kind of interesting. And I think I was going on holiday. I thought I'll have a read. And it was a really good book about writing screenplays. Actually, it was really, really useful. So those are my three, I guess.
Your three. Yeah. I'd say books like that, usually the point I use them is when I get to my third act and I can't finish the film, and I'm sort of like, what? Because obviously the problem is always in the first act, or it's always somewhere hidden earlier on. That's the reason you haven't got that finale, you haven't got that third act nailed. So those books are a really good way to look back at what you haven't done earlier. That's sow the seeds for your big finale.
Yes.
So go on and give me number two. What's your second thing on your list?
So number two for me, this is a very practical one, and that is don't start without having your post-production planned. And that's exactly what I did. I was like, right, we need to make the film. I had a window of time to do the shoot. I knew I was going to edit it, but I didn't have any kind of workflow of how I was going to get the footage, the raw footage, get it synced up to the sound rushes, get it to me. None of that was planned, and it cost me months and months and months after the shoot of making no progress, because, you know, I had the guide audio from the camera that I could use just to get a rough idea, but the second scene in the film is a scene where they're driving in a car and it's a bonnet mount, and so that's just all the camera has is and I just needed to have all that sorted out, because it just would have been so much simpler to have the rushes all synced up, sent over to me in a way that I could have just kind of at least gone through them and worked with them and got a sense of what we had in the rushes. And then it was even after the edit, there was, you know, I was doing this every stage. I was doing it as I got there rather than planning any of it. So it was like edit, and then sound design, and then colorist to do the grade, and then score, and these things were all overlapping, and people were needing different bits of data and reels and copies of the film, and I just, none of it was planned. It was all very kind of hectic, and it resulted in doing things in an order, especially my sound design, where I was kind of trying to do scene by scene. I was trying to do a scene and send it over to him. It's like, that doesn't help your sound designer, because they just want to lay one. Every track wants to lay for the entire movie. Doesn't help them if you send them scene by scene by scene. It's just like, get it done and get them a draft, and then you can start working. So things like that I just had no idea about, and plan it all in, and then budget it in. You know, make sure you got enough money on your budget to get it done. The edit, it cost me nothing because I was doing the edit, but, you know, I had to pay for everything else, and so it was about scraping together bits of money here and there whenever I could to kind of take that next step. So that obviously brought more delays as well. So plan your post-production, make sure you know how you're going to deliver your film, and who's going to do all of those different parts that are necessary. And it's not you, unless you happen to be someone who happens to be great at editing and grading and stuff like that. No one can do all these things. You need to get the right people to do it, because that's the only way your film's going to look like a movie.
Yeah, agree completely. And I'd say the other thing is, if you do end up doing all of that stuff, your film will suffer, because you're not getting all those other creative inputs into it to make it into a better thing, especially with sound design. I edit my films as well, like you, which enjoy, which
I love
most
editing.
of the time,
Actually,
right? Most of the time,
I
I'd
find it's I find it really rewarding because you get to see, especially as the writer, if you're a writer
Mm,
director, it's the point at which you get to see that thing that you envisaged
yeah,
actually come together, and I find that really really exciting. I really
yeah,
enjoy it.
and also as an actor, it must be nice being able to pick your performances, the best takes for
I
you.
So one thing I'm really good at is detaching my kind of actor ego from
Mm,
my filmmaker ego, and I won't choose a take because I look better in it. It's always about what makes the story, what tells the story the best. You know what I mean?
yeah.
I'm very very able to look at myself very coldly and just go, is he any good in this
Yeah,
scene?
but
Is there a better
you're
take?
talking to me with muscles and chiseled looks. If you were me making a film, I'd be looking at it going, "Oh, double chin. No, I don't care if the woman opposite me is crying really well. I've looked like
Yeah.
I've got it's a side profile. My nose looks big. That's not going in. So maybe
But
that's
sometimes, again, sometimes what you want for the performances, you want ugly.
yeah,
Like ugly is
you do,
all you
yeah,
need.
yeah,
That's what's going to sell it. So,
yeah,
I mean, I think just from years of making short films and things, and from when I was a kid, putting myself in things that I've made have just meant that I'm quite good at separating those two aspects, being in front of and behind the camera.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, agree. And I would say there's a little element of that with recording this podcast. So when I first started doing these, I was very conscious of, oh, look at how I look. Now I don't
Yeah.
care. Um, so then I was just going to add to your what you said. I was going to agree with all of it wholeheartedly. Getting those people in place, because post production on a feature film, especially an indie feature film, if you're not careful, it can go on for absolutely forever. And your cast and crew are going, when is this film coming out? Two,
Yeah,
3
and
years
you feel the
later.
pressure, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it took me 2.5 years to finish the film, and we went through a lot of different things. So I did the initial edit. I thought the edit was done. I then went and did some test screenings with some filmmaker friends. That was incredibly valuable. Like that
Mm.
gave me, and that's the kind of thing you were talking about about sharing the script. That's a bit
Hmm.
I never got to do, but actually was to share the film with people and go, right, what's working, what's not working. I obviously thought everything was working fine, came back with a load of notes about, like, I don't understand why that happened. This isn't clear enough. And went and did reshoots, and that obviously made it more protracted in terms of time. But the improvement in the film is kind of beyond measure because of those things. And the things
Mm.
we had to change weren't big, but they were really significant. They were
Mm.
really important, and they really make the film land the way that it lands. And without them, it wouldn't be the same at
Yeah.
all.
Uh,
So
uh,
yeah, no, I
yeah.
think that getting another set of eyes, getting sets of eyes that you trust their opinions, who are not just going to be like your family, who are going to be, oh, it's so good, well done. That you need people who are going to dig into it and ask you the hard questions about it and make you feel uncomfortable. And you need to be able to detach yourself from your writer or your director ego and go, right, these are cold hard facts now. Like, you can't defend, I can't explain to you why the thing that I meant on the screen, why you didn't understand it, because if you
Mm.
didn't understand it, that's my fault as the filmmaker. Like,
Yeah.
I haven't given you enough information, and I can't go around to every single person who watches this film for perpetuity going, well, actually, see what happened there was, if you notice, he was holding the thing, and that meant
Mm.
no. If it's not clear, it's not clear. Simple as that. You're going to have to do something about it.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes that can be as simple as adding in an extra ADR line or something that
Yep.
just gives the person watching it the clue, and they don't get sucked out of that movie thinking, I wonder why that's happened or what's come
Exactly.
into that particular scene.
Yeah. In my case, we did a couple of really simple insert shots, which made a huge difference.
Mm,
Really,
yeah.
really simple, but really impressive.
And the other part of that also that you mentioned that gives me anxiety is that kind of data wrangling side, is
Mm.
where you store it all, how you get it, even at the end of the day. I mean, I shot a short film recently where Chris, who's grades the films, was doing all of that data wrangling. He was
Yeah.
downloading all the footage, and it gave me nightmares because I like to have it in my hand at the end of the day and then do all my transfers onto different computers. Obviously, Chris knows what he's doing,
Yeah.
but knowing if you're going into that feature film, you've got enough hard drives, you're going to be able to get all the footage off, you're going to be able to make copies of it, keep it in safe places, because the last thing you want is a hard drive going wrong and you losing everything.
I'll give you an example. Um, on our first day of shooting, I was still prepping for most of the shoot. And the first day of shooting was the big boxing match, the big finale. We're at a real event. We were shooting around a crowd of 1,000 people. When they all went away, we went and shot all of our close-ups, and we were there till 5 a.m. I was buying hard drives to store all the footage on. and my DOP had said, make sure you get a couple of these solid state drives. And I had a 5 or 2 terabyte drive or something like that. And it was a spinning disk drive. And we got to about 3 o'clock in the morning and we're like, all the cards are full. We need to start data
Oh no, you
transferring.
have to
And I was
wait.
like, okay, we've got the laptop out. I was like, okay, let's do the transfer. And I got out this thing, and he's like, I thought you got the solid state. It's like, oh yeah, mate, they're on order from Amazon. They're arriving literally tomorrow.
Mm.
And instead of like 60 seconds, we had to sit and wait for like 35 minutes for
Mm.
all the data to transfer onto this spinning disk. And it's just because it didn't have the right hardware,
Yeah.
and it just, wasn't ready for it. And like, so, make sure that stuff, that kind of, that's, I guess that's kind of part of the post-production part we talked about earlier, is like what you do with your footage when it's shot, how you wrangle it, who holds onto it, where you duplicate it, where you make all those decisions. So yeah, getting all that stuff right up front can save you so much time.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So my number two is 10. I'm trying to think of how I phrase this. So 10 things you should never do when making a feature film, and I'm not sure how to phrase this, but it's around sound, and it's around maybe forgetting the importance of sound, both recorded on set and sound design. And it's
Yeah,
something I see in a lot of films, that it really does lower production value massively when you
yeah,
get bad sound, and it lowers it even more when there's no sound design. So
yeah.
making sure you are recording good sound, you've got a good sound person on set, and that your sound designer knows what they're doing, because they're going to be telling half the story with that audio.
Yeah.
So if you don't make it, if you don't prioritize it, you're going to suffer later down the line.
And that prioritization comes like when you're on set, making sure your sound person is getting everything they need to do, listening to them when they say we
Yeah.
need to go again because the sound wasn't
But
right or something.
sometimes you feel like, oh, really? That
Yeah,
looked beautiful. Oh, really? Have we got to do it again because of
is that
sound? And
really?
you have to stop yourself saying that, because it is
Yeah,
important.
it is important.
Yeah.
But then also, like you say, the sound design, like your film's perceived quality will be lowered so much more by poor sound
Mm.
than by poor visuals. You know what I mean? I think the sound is the thing that is so often a giveaway of something that's indie or low budget. And, I was incredibly fortunate. We had a really good sound team, but we also brought on a sound consultant who came via my composer, actually, who is a hugely experienced and lots of big action movies. He's done fight scenes. So for us, like bringing the boxing scene, for example, really to life in terms of the sound design, that was so critical. And we got there because we brought someone who knew what they were doing, and I put the money into it to get it done, and the time, absolutely critical for a film like mine, which kind of rides on a big boxing finale. That really has to sing, like, in terms of
Mm.
all the sound design. You have to feel every impact and every crunch, and that's really, really critical. And you only get that by getting really good people to do it.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. Give me number three. What have you got?
So my number three actually is an immediate follow on from yours. So mine is, for a feature, don't plan to get your soundtrack from a library.
Yeah.
Right? So you can get away with this on a short, right? You can do it on a short because shorts, they're shorter. There's much less to do. In a feature film, and I had intended to do this originally with Unlicensed. I had intended to go to Audio Network and do what I've done all in the past for short films and stuff. But having a composer, having someone actually writing themes for your characters and cues that match your story perfectly, they just give it a whole different level of quality. They give it like a consistency throughout the film. You've got a tone that you're able to keep. You don't have to go looking for different bits of music that match certain scenes, happy, sad, tension, whatever, and try and match them all together from different composers. You get one person who understands the story and is going to create music that fits with each scene but has a coherent overall kind of tone to it. And I think that was a hugely valuable lesson for me, was like, have someone writing the music for you. Don't expect to find it in a library. You just won't. And in fact, when we brought my composer on, we were trying to get ready for to get to submit to Sundance. And initially we were looking at his library of stuff. We were like, okay, well, let's just look at your life. So at least it was the same composer, but he's like, you can pick and choose from this. And very quickly you're like, none of this matches up.
Mm.
Like, that sounds great, and that sounds great, but these two things are completely different. They have no continuity between them at all. And then when he wrote the actual score for the film, you get these cues, you get these little motifs that you get from each character, and you can do so much storytelling with the music that now I think you'd be crazy not to.
Yeah,
Absolutely crazy not to.
yeah, definitely. I think what I'd add on to that is finding a good composer is difficult, or finding one. Sorry, I'll rephrase that. Not finding a good composer, but finding the right composer for your project can be a
Yeah.
challenge. And I've been in situations before where I've gone for a composer and I've really they've done some music. I've listened to it on the film and I've kind of been unsure. And then I get in my own head and I'm like, is this good? Am I a bad judge because I'm not quite getting it? But you'll know when it's good, and you have to
Yeah.
trust your gut when you hear that music and you're like, yeah, it's making me feel something. But that can be difficult. But like you say, the thing that a good composer brings, I've got a guy called Brian who did Apocalypse Box. He's doing a short film for me at the moment. Is often they'll surprise you with things. They'll
Yes.
they'll juxtapose something, or they'll
Yeah.
kind of, they'll put things in that you never thought you would do. And you would think, oh yeah, like you say, a bit of sad music here. Sometimes it's the complete opposite. You don't realize until they've figured that out for you. Um,
100%.
so yeah, trying to find the right composer and trusting your gut. And I guess with that, I'm saying don't go too far down the road with somebody if it's not working. You've got to just say, look, this isn't quite what I was looking for. Move on.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Number 3 for me is still in that area. It was going to be don't ignore the importance of a good mix. So
Yeah.
this is the culmination of all that beautiful sound design and that music, and getting someone to mix it properly, especially if you're going to be showing it in a cinema, because you want people to have the best experience possible. You want them to hear all your hits in the boxing ring. You want to hear the beautiful score and for it to be mixed perfectly. So I would
Yeah.
say definitely spend some time on getting somebody in who knows how to mix your film and mix the sound.
And that is, so we did our dub or our mix down with a local guy who had a studio. It was quite a small studio, so it didn't have a kind of, we weren't in like in a cinema kind of mixing room. And the music seemed to come out really loud, so we kind of dialed down the music. And then when we made the DCP, and when we did our premiere, myself and my composer, we just like, damn it, the music is too quiet. Like the music was all too quiet, and it was just the way that studio had been set up. We were hearing it much louder than it was, and we'd overcompensate and dialed it down. So we then, for London Independent Film Festival, we ramped it back up again, and then it was all kind of even, and it was all as it kind of should be. But yeah, I think that a lesson for me definitely is like, don't do that again. Like, spend the money, go down to Soho, go into a big mixing room, get the full surround 5.1 surround sound, and hear it as it will be heard in the cinema, and make sure you're happy with that, and not kind of second guess it from, the guy had a great studio, but he does computer games, so it's a really different audio kind of world he kind of tries to create.
Yeah, without the proper equipment, unfortunately, every laptop, phone, television are all going to have a different sound setting on them. So if you don't get that middle ground, if you don't get it all balanced correctly, something like that's going to happen, and it's going to be all over the place. What's your number 4?
My number 4 is, and I was told this so before I made my first feature, I was sort of phoning around a few friends who'd made features and sort of asking them, like, what would you say? Like, especially if you've just made a first feature. And one of them said to me, try to substantially have all your film in the can at the end of your principal photography. And so my 4th one is, don't miss any major scenes from your first block of filming or your principal block of filming, because without all the scenes, you cannot see how whether the film was working or not. And I had a really key scene that was not in the film, but it's a turning point in the narrative. And so without that scene, I was like, we've got before, we've got after, but I don't know whether the actual moment lands, whether it works. All I've got is the script for it. And, then we later shot it. A year later, we shot that scene and inserted it. And luckily, because of the time it elapsed, we'd had time to, that's one of the few scenes we did rehearse, and we really managed to tease out a really good kind of raising of the stakes. And this is the scene with my character's old boss when he goes to try and get a city job back and is, told, no way, you're out. So it's quite a big moment. But I would definitely say make sure that your main block of filming gets everything in the can, even if it's rough. If you've got like, oh, we've got this little thing we need to do, we've got time, can we just knock off something, get something, so that you can see it and put it into an assembly, and you can see whether it all is sort of fitting together and working. Because sometimes you may get to it and go, yeah, don't really need that.
Mhm.
We've got a rough idea of what it would be, but and with the plan was to go back and reshoot it. Now I've seen it. We don't need it.
Yeah.
We don't need it. You've just saved yourself a day of shooting and the cost of a crew for a day by not needing to do it. So yeah. So my fourth is don't miss any major scenes from your story in your main principal photography.
Yeah. And as you were saying that, I could hear Laura in my ear going, it's going to cost you money. If you get everybody back and you've got to do a huge big scene or something, that's going to cost you money that you don't want to spend. So make sure it's in that schedule. And
Yeah.
the only things that you're doing on those little weekend shoots are just pickups. They're just little things that don't really matter.
Yeah.
Number 4 is one of my 10 things you shouldn't do is work with difficult people. So, and I think both mine and Laura's radar, if you will call it that, for this, it has improved over the years. But I think when you're any relationship, whether it's a cast member, a crew member, even somebody you're getting a location from, you've got to look for those little red flags that are going to be a huge problem when you come to shoot the film, because you're going to be under a lot of pressure. You're going to be under time, money, all of that thing's going to be on your shoulders. So the last thing you want in that environment is somebody who's going to be a problem, whether that's because they've got a chip on the shoulder or because this isn't actually the right film for them to be working on at that exact moment. So really do look for those red flags so that when the pressure's on, you're not getting another problem from someone else. Did you have anyone like that on the film?
I'm very, very lucky in
Yeah.
that everyone I brought on board had mostly worked with me before, so I knew them, and I knew them really well. I knew most of my crew really well, and I'd acted with a lot of my cast a lot before. So a lot of my cast came from my drama school. So in 2020, when we had COVID and everything got locked down, I went back to drama school because it was all online, and I live in Cambridge, and I had wanted to do it for years. And so I got to spend a year with this remarkable group of actors. And from that same class came Jack, who plays Nikki Miller, came Sarah Diamond, who plays my ex-wife, or my estranged wife, Chloe, came LaShonda, who plays the head chef. So and there were a couple of other roles that were going to be filled, but they unfortunately couldn't do it. So I had this really unique experience of actually not just auditioning someone, not just spending 5 minutes in an audition room and doing a recall, but actually spending like a year working with them on all sorts of different scenes and just seeing what they were capable of doing. So I really knew that they could knock it out of the park and that I could rely on them to be in a scene with them because I'd done scene work with them. So I could be in a scene with them and we could be present in the moment and it would all be great. My crew, like Jeremy, my DOP, I'd worked with him a few times before. He shot my short film Acceptance, but we'd known each other for a long time. He was local to Cambridge. So, and when you have good people like that, you trust their judgment. So he brought Matt, our focus puller, in. And I was like, if you think he's the good guy, he's a good guy. I know that I trust your judgment on that. You know what I mean? So you make sure that you don't surround yourself with people who might make mistakes. The other thing I would say is that you have to lead from the front, right? You are the leader of this army when it comes to shooting a film. As the director, as the producer, I was kind of both. I had co-producers as well, but like as the director, you call the shots and you set the tone, right? So you have to make sure that you are projecting the kind of atmosphere that you want the set to be, which is like you want it to be positive, you want it to be a safe space, you want it to be encouraging, you want everyone to be able to do their best work, and you want everyone to be able to feel as if they have a really important role to play. So one of the first things I did when we started was like, guys, I got everyone around me and said, look, I realize we're all here making this film. I know that and I've said a massive thank you because at the point at which I asked them to do it, there was no script. I was writing the script every morning until we started shooting. And I said, look, I want to make sure that this is a genuine collaboration. If anyone has an idea, they're watching a scene that we're doing and has got an idea about something, please feel free to come to me and just suggest it, whatever. I would love to hear it, but it's my decision, right? I'd love to hear it. I will make the final decision. So just make sure you're collaborative, but you also are leading the group, right? You're in charge.
Yeah.
And as long as people understand that, then I've never had a problem with that.
Yeah. definitely. But you don't want anyone. I guess my the fear or the thing I might have had in the past was if you've got on the crew side, it would be someone undermining you, and it would be someone second guessing you and maybe pushing things a little bit too far.
Yeah,
And on the cast side, the thing you've got to be really careful with on a micro budget is if you do go with somebody and you've ignored those red flags, as soon as you've shot something with them, you're kind of you've started now. You're kind of the power dynamic's going to shift a little bit because
yeah,
if you do get rid of them and you do say, "Hey, this isn't really working out," you've got to reshoot that stuff. It's a whole new level of ball ache. So making sure when we always do auditions, but those auditions aren't just about testing the person whether they're good in that role. They're a conversation before and after just to be like, does this person understand what they're getting themselves into, and are they
yeah.
going to be someone who's going to be fun to be around for
Is
two,
this,
3 weeks?
can I work with this person basically?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Can I
Can I get
spend a
on with
lot of
this
time
person
with
as a
them?
human being? And especially on a micro budget, like, is this person able to roll up their sleeves and kind of get stuck in and muck it out with the rest of us? Because
Mm,
we're not going to have trailers, we're not going to have we're not going to have craft services. None of that's going to be there, right? It's going to be tough. And will this person still be fun to be around when it's difficult and it's cold and it's late and all those things? You need someone who's got like a good energy that's going to keep you going. You want people that you want to be around, and like I say, you have to be that as well for your crew.
yeah. Amen. Amen. Cool. Right. And your number 5. What have you got? Your final
So
one.
my number 5 is, of all of the things that we have said that you must not do, my number 5 is, do not let any of those things stop you from making your film. Right? So you may be like, oh, well, because there's always a million reasons why not to do something and why you are not ready to start. And at some point, you just have to start. So all of your pieces may not be in place. If you're making a micro budget indie, you might be making it over weekends for 6 months or something. Like, you just have to get started. So everything that we've described as, like, in a perfect world on a micro budget indie would have all these things lined up, all the ducks would be in a row. Just because they're not doesn't mean you shouldn't start making your film. You should be making your movie at, whatever it takes. So don't let any of those things become excuses as to why you haven't started making your movie.
Yeah.
Because I've been thinking about this quite a lot recently. Around, people often talk about, like, waiting for permission to do
Mm,
something. And for me, my interpretation was like, well, I'm not, I always used to be like, yeah, I'm not waiting for permission. I could just, my new interpretation of that is like, actually, you're allowing yourself to make excuses as to why you're not doing something.
mm.
I haven't got the money. That's giving someone else permission to stop you by saying, oh, well, someone else needs to provide me with the money. I don't have the connection. I don't have the right cast or crew. Like, all of these are problems that you can solve if you decide that they are yours and that you have the agency to solve them, and you're not waiting for anyone else to do that for you. You have to take the action. You have to put your first foot forward and just start. So number 5 is, if none of 1 to 4 or 1 to 8 or 9 are true, still make your
Do
movie.
it anyway. Do it
Yeah,
anyway.
100%.
So I think mine's pretty similar actually, and it's along the same vein. My number 10, and it is don't put things off until you're ready. So it's kind of on a very similar vein to you, and I guess mine's maybe also thinking even before you get that idea for that film. I see a lot of people get stuck making short films because they think that's going to prepare them for the feature, and they're going to make short film after short film, particularly students. I'm not ready for a feature yet. I'm not ready. You're never going to be ready for a feature film. It's brilliant, but it's also horrific. And the other thing you've got to do, it's never going to be perfect either. It's never going to be like you say, all this and exact that. It's always going to be this mishmash of whatever comes together on the day. So definitely you should never wait until you're ready, because you're never going to be
And one of
ready.
the great things about this art form is that so much amazing creativity comes out of compromise.
Mm,
So many times, if you were able to do the thing exactly as you planned it, it would be fine. But sometimes having a spanner thrown in the works leads you to come up with a solution which is so much better than the thing you had planned.
yeah.
That you are actually, like, super super grateful that that thing went wrong, that you didn't have access to that location, or that car broke down. Like, oh, we couldn't do it there, but actually what we did was so much better, and it worked much better in the final edit, whatever it is. So many times I've experienced it personally, where like you're like, damn it, why can't we do this thing? And you're like, okay, well, what else can we do? That thing turns out to be so much better than what you had planned.
Yeah, absolutely. And the evidence of that can be seen not just in low budget film, but in big budget film when they have got all the money in the world. You look at the, I'm not going to go into a Star Wars.
Raiders.
Well, I'm not going to go to Star Wars rant, but look at the prequels. He had all the money in the world, blank check, make any film he wanted to, and he didn't have anyone telling him, no, you can't do that. And then we got those 3 films, which I love, but they're not as, you know, perfect as the original trilogy, which obviously had all these different setbacks. And like you say, Raiders of the Lost Ark, anything that's they've had to struggle to bring that to the screen, it's evident that those struggles have kind of resulted in something that's better than they would have got.
It's more creative, you know.
100%. Definitely. Cool. Well, thank you so much for that, Mark. They were really useful. I hope they're going to help people with their first feature film. Do check out Unlicensed on all the digital platforms everywhere. I'll put all the links below so you can check it out. Let us know what you think. And I'll see you on the next one.
Thank you. It's been fun.